Good afternoon or good evening from New York. Welcome to Starcast from Planet Waves. I'm Eric Francis Coppolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer, here with the edition of Starcast accompanying the January 30th, 2025 weekly horoscope. The February monthly came out last week, and that is on Substack and on your Planet Waves feed. There's no article this week. I have written quite enough, thank you. And I am here, though, with a two-part Starcast. One part of this will be a reading of the Imbolc chart, the chart for the sun at the midpoint of Aquarius. And then there'll be a little music break, and then in the second part, I'm going to take on two news charts, which are kind of close in time and space. One is the federal funding freeze from Monday night, and then the second is the Potomac River midair collision between a commuter jet and a Black Hawk helicopter. But first, let's talk about Imbolc, or the Midwinter holiday, where we've arrived. I think I did the horoscope mostly based on the new moon chart and the quarter moon chart. I'm not sure. I don't have that handy, and it was a while ago. But I want to take a look at the Midwinter holiday, which, of course, down in the Southern Hemisphere is the midsummer holiday. Though I've never really ironed out a way to translate the roundel of the seasons to the Southern Hemisphere. I'd probably have to live there for a couple of years before I did that. But in any event, it was invented as a Northern Hemisphere thing, and relates primarily to the Northern Hemisphere seasons and signs. And if you live down under, you're welcome to reverse the concept. This would be the midsummer holiday in the Southern Hemisphere, which is also called second planting or first harvest. But up here in the north, the midwinter holiday is called Imbolc, which means in the belly, meaning in the belly of the stars, because it's still mostly dark out. And the other translation of Imbolc is in the milk. And I guess the milk could refer to the starry dynamo of the night, or the snow that used to usually kind of blanket much of society in the north anyway, north of the Mason-Dixon line anyway. I don't know. Well, we got a lot of snow down south this year, but anyway, again, these are mostly northern traditions. So in the belly of the stars, in the milk, in the soup of the nighttime and the midwinter. So one thing interesting about midwinter is that it seems to me, and this is just kind of a thing from long observation and a kind of body knowledge, and also going through many years earlier in my career of doing more focused ritual work at the time of these events, and liking to notice the changing seasons, and also loving living in a place that has distinct seasons, is that winter actually starts to let go at this time of year. There's a touch of spring in the air. Sure, there can be some big snowstorms, and sure, it can be very cold, and there can be whatever Arctic air masses that slide down over our part of the planet. But what I've always noticed is that in early February, the winter starts to let go. And one of the traditions of the cross-quarter days, by the way, this is a cross-quarter day. I didn't explain that. Why don't I do that? And then we'll get to Groundhog Day. The cross quarters are when the sun reaches the midpoint between an equinox or a solstice. And so we are at the midpoint between the Capricorn solstice and the Aries equinox. There are really 8 6-week seasons. To me, it's easier to think of the year that way. And they're very distinct. The first part of autumn is very distinct from the second part of autumn, and the first part of spring is very distinct from the second part of spring. It's like that with all the holidays, and the transition from out of one season into another, then out of one season into another, very palpable and distinct. Of course, most of us don't really recognize the seasons changing, the seasons around us. Often difficult to discern in very large cities. The subtleties, anyway. There are a lot of places where you don't get a good, clear view of the sky. A lot of the natural world has been paved over, and so forth. But I think that it's a generally wholesome thing. It helps you stay in touch with physical reality and the world in which you live in and the pulses of life, to follow the seasons as they move. And to notice now now you get an opportunity to notice what it feels like in midwinter, again, Northern Hemisphere midwinter, and to feel that kind of tipping point between autumn and spring. So focusing on the Imbolc chart, there are a number of different patterns. There's interesting things going on in the cardinal signs, in the fixed signs, and in the mutable signs. And I would be thrilled to take you on a little tour of some of what that is, and maybe we can get a sense of how it reflects some things in the collective environment and some things in your individual and personal environment. One of the things that is lurking, and let's start with Pisces for a second, because there's interesting stuff going on there, and I've indicated the Pisces side of the chart with some kind of teal blue pencil around the outside of the outermost ring. There's been a conjunction brewing since last summer, and that is the conjunction between Saturn and Nessus. Saturn has an authoritarian concept behind it, but the true nature of Saturn is connecting with one's inner authority. Those familiar with human design know there's a couple of different kinds of inner authority that are described. I'll be breaking that down at some point soon. But generally, for our purposes, I think the underlying nature of Saturn is mastering one's inner authority. And when that is not done, there's going to be quite a bit of external authority imposed on us, and that's not usually very fun or very pleasant, though most do not like the confrontation with their internal authority and the kind of growth that it requires, and the necessity to make decisions and work within time frames and structure your life. All of these things are indicated by Saturn. And Saturn is creeping up on a Centaur planet, and the Centaur planet is called Nessus. And Nessus is the third ever discovered Centaur, and I think a very significantly important one because it addresses the concept of consequences and the concept of responsibility. So it's kind of serving as a super Saturn right now, in terms of Nessus also being about inner authority. Typically, there are consequences that are external, enforced by or imposed by things that seem to be outside of oneself, but then the bottom line with Nessus is the buck stops with you. And the term "the buck stops" means you deal the cards, you run the table. It's your life, your trajectory through the world and through the time you have on Earth is basically about the decisions that you make, and then the way that you proceed from having made those decisions. And so this is exact a few days after Imbolc, I think around the 7th or so, and I've been watching this one coming since maybe May or April or something of 2024. There was a near miss on July 4th. So whatever you were doing around July 4th, that week, that month, that day, that will tell you a little bit about what this was about potentially. And there's a good chance that you have addressed the matter. Whatever it was, it's a good chance that you addressed it. It might have been something that was sort of menacing you in some way, or lurking with the sense that that there might be serious consequences for not responding to your situation, so now that is upon us. Now, meanwhile, what's also dancing around in Pisces, as we begin with the end of the zodiac, is that Neptune and Venus are in a conjunction with the North Node, and I think that this is about sorting out true desire from one's fantasy desire. Okay, so that's more or less what's up on the mutable cross. I don't want to go too much further into it, except to say one thing, which is that Jupiter is about to station direct, and when it does, it will move into toward the last of the three squares to Saturn. And I've been describing this as the last chance phenomenon. The Reverend Dr. Mark Edmund Jones, long gone astrologer, said that the square of Jupiter and Saturn in a natal chart talks about the feeling of a last chance lifetime. This is the last chance to do things. I address this in many of the readings in The Awakening, how to address that sensation of the last chance. And I think it also describes the kind of desperation that we're seeing coming from official authorities right now. So that's in the offing. And by the way, that Saturn, that square of Jupiter to Saturn is going to happen with Saturn in Aries and Jupiter in Cancer. So there will not be any more squares between them in mutable signs. It's going to move on to the Aries point, where it will have more influence and be very, very exciting. Okay, let's take a quick look at the cardinal cross. I've indicated the cardinal cross by the orange square. And at the moment of Imbolc, the moment that I'm timing this as the moment the sun reaches 15 degrees even Aquarius. And I'll put a little green arrow pointing at the sun coming down from the top left, so you can see that. And I'll circle it's easy to see the number 15 next to it, but the green arrow will point you to the sun. And so, we're not there. Well, that's what the chart's cast for. Let's talk about the cardinal cross, then we'll get into the fixed cross. So the cardinal cross is the orange square. And at the moment the sun reaches the midpoint of Aquarius, so we've got this kind of whopping setup in the cardinal signs. And one of the things going on is that the moon is passing through the Chiron-Eris conjunction. So if you take a look on the left side of the chart, below the ascendant, below the 04 Aries, right in the first house, I'll put the number 1 in that house. In the first house, it's circled the number 1 in this chart, in this house. That is a conjunction that's going to be, we are fully under its influence right now. Only fully is going to get more. It's going to intensify over basically the next 3 months or so, but then over the next year. So there's 3 of these things. I think it's May, November, and March are the 3. So we're going to kind of get sprung along on this bridge of the Chiron-Eris conjunction. And this, too, describes accountability. It describes, Chiron directing its intention, its awareness, its healing capacity, and its kind of organizational principle. There's a lot of Saturn in Chiron on the chaos factor of Eris. And becoming aware of what we have done to ourselves with all of this electronic media. So this conjunction in Aries has a contact point in Capricorn right now. That's Pallas Athene. That's politics. I would have to say that Pallas Athene, the asteroid of politics, square Eris, is the very image of perfection of what we're seeing right now in terms of astrology, describing an extremely chaotic situation with Pallas Athene in Capricorn, which should be quite restrained and reserved, actually, just going insane with hundreds of executive orders and shutting down the government earlier in the week. And this all arrangement is in contact with a point called Zeus, which is about directed energy. That's over on the right side of the chart, the two orange lines pointing to it. You can't really, I've kind of scribbled it, but I will write in the word Zeus next to it. Z-E. Those vowels. Every time you're trying to spell something, it's always the vowels that screw it up. Z-E-U-S. All right. And that with the very point of mistrust, the Black Moon Lilith, and then down in mid-Leo, no, hold on. What am I reading? Yeah, cardinal signs. So sorry. Mars retrograde. Mars retrograde. I don't usually read 3 crosses for Starcast, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Sticking to the orange one. Sticking to the orange cross. That is to say, the cardinal cross. The prime mover on the cardinal cross right now is retrograde Mars. Sorry for the confusion here. There's no way to do this with a script, and it's going to be a little bit disorganized without one. Okay, Mars retrograde is square Chiron. I'm going to put orange arrows at Mars retrograde and Chiron. Listen, this is easier to do than you think. You just have to actually look at the chart. And I'll tell you, there was nobody explaining this stuff to me every week when I was studying. Chiron. I was putting it together out of books written 10 or 20 or 30, 40, 50 years ago, and maybe I could ask somebody a couple of questions, pretty much had to hack everything myself. So I don't mean to baby anyone here, but if you just listen to what I'm saying, if you want to read this stuff, which is really fun, just follow along. Look at the chart. It's easy. It's easy. Print the thing out. We all have nice printers at work or at home. Print it out, scribble all over it, make it your own. Okay, so Mars square Chiron. This is the life feels like going to the dentist. It is not really that pleasant of a feeling. The going to the dentist metaphor comes from Barbara Hand-Cloud, which I thought was pretty funny. I noticed in Mars square Chiron natal chart people that they have so much integrity that they're just totally uptight and can't have any fun. They're the kind of people who really want to take their clothes off with you. They really want to just get undressed right in front of you, but they won't let themselves do it because they have integrity. It's like, well, tell me then, how do you have fun? So there's so much integrity, you can't have fun. So flip side of that, the sensation of going to the dentist. This is happening right now. It's like it's squeezing. Mars is squeezing Chiron. And I think there is a distinct frustration with courage with this setup. And the courage involved is emotional courage. I'm not talking about going into battle or jumping out of a helicopter. I'm talking about the kind of courage where you feel like you can say what you mean, or where you decide that the truth about who you are is all that matters, and that's it. You can't change the truth about who you are. Doesn't make a damn bit of difference if somebody knows it or doesn't know it, or what they think, or what stories they make up. And by the way, speaking of a person who spends my life sticking my neck out, I would personally rather keep spin control over my version of my truth about my life. I'll piss my corner, because once I've done that, it makes it very hard for anyone else to make up a story about me. And so if you stand in and live in your truth, that takes up the bandwidth that could be consumed by deception and by gossip and by false ideas about you. And yeah, it takes a little bravery at first, but then you realize, no, your reality is your reality. So Mars retrograde in Cancer seems to have some squeamishness with the truth of your emotional reality. And of all the things I've mentioned going on, and so far we've talked about what have we talked about? Okay. well, Pallas Athene and Moon Chiron. I mean, that's like feeling too injured to be real. Now, the thing is that one sense of injury and under the guidance of Chiron can lead you to being bold about your healing process and possibly experimenting with the idea that not treating yourself like you're made of dry, fragile eggshells is the thing that you need to connect with your own vital force, with your own healing force. And meanwhile, I think it's very important to realize, how little energy people have to really pay attention to who you are. You're standing in your truth, your commitment to your healing process. This is all about you. This has got nothing to do with anybody else, and you're lucky if anyone even meekly cares. So the truth is that your life is about you. Your life is your canvas, your art studio, your music studio, your pasture, your meadow, your forest. Your life is your time and your space to ignore. Now, there's such a thing as dharma, about the interconnectedness of all things, and our choices have consequences, but they're generally not the consequences that we think. And additionally, sacrificing your truth and your pleasure has plenty of consequences. All right, let's take one look at one last cross. This is the one highlighted in purple. And this is the fixed cross. Fixed cross meaning the fixed signs meaning Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And the sun also is a prime mover in this chart, since this is the chart for the sun reaching the midpoint of Aquarius. And this is making a bunch of interesting aspects, mostly to minor planets. Let's just go over them. First of all, the sun is in a conjunction with Sappho. Sappho of the Isle of Lesbos, the woman who ran this kind of finishing school for women, one of the first poets that we hear from in the Western world. Now, I've said this before, and someone said, there were female poets we've heard from before Sappho. If you know of any, I'd like to know. But as far as I'm concerned, Sappho is the first voice of a woman that we hear from in the Western world. And while I have seen this aspect pertain to lesbianism, it can also represent the lesbian continuum of female relationships, but more significantly, Sappho is about a point of gathering happening in Aquarius. Well, ain't that nice? A sign associated with gathering, but if you have a gathering, it's good to invite the rabble into the gathering. Don't be too elitist. Aquarius is really overcooked and overboiled on elitism. This is all conjunct Chariklo in Aquarius, and the thing about Chariklo is that she offers abiding love. She is the one who stays by your side through thick and through thin. This is square Albion, or 1992 QB1, which is reaching the midpoint of Taurus. I've been covering QB1 since, it was discovered in 92, and I was given the ephemeris in the summer of 98 by Robert von Heeren. So I was probably the first adapter to 1992 QB1. Been working on it ever since. And to me, it's the first planet discovered beyond Pluto. Discovered by Jane Liu and Dave Jewett. Confirms the discovery of the Kuiper Belt. Kuiper Belt. The realm of minor planets, planetoids, and this kind of cloud of little rocky and icy planets out in the vicinity of Pluto. It's further out than Pluto, but it's still in the same thing. And QB1 to me is the gentle luring to new experiences and to growth. Unlike Pluto, which is kind of growth at the point of a gun, QB1 is about being invited to grow, being given the opportunity and the invitation to grow. There's a lot. If you read my article from Tuesday night, Book of Blue, Bare Essence, there's a lot of 1992 QB1 in that article. So you read each one of those chapters and think, there's going to be a 1992 QB1 connection. It is the gentle luring to new experience. And for those who are involved in animal medicine, this is deer medicine. Okay. Additionally, on this cross of things connected by the purple lines, down in Leo, we've got Terpsichore. That is the dance of existence. And that is, opposite all this stuff going on in Aquarius. I mean, that's like, if I can't dance, it's not my revolution, which means if you apply that principle, most revolutions are not going to be your revolution. This is square kind of a super Neptune called Poseidon, and also square a point called Mababwa, Mbabwanawar. ESA, Mabab. I just call it Mabab. That's about dancing, rainbows, and beer. Don't know what to make of it. Rain dance. The rain dance. All right. That is what I have to say in this first part of our program. I will take a bit of a music break here, and then we will continue with the discussion of the Potomac midair collision that happened on Wednesday night and the federal funding freeze that happened on Monday night, the 27th at 7:42 p.m. So let's take a song break. This is Jelko McMullen, Vision Quest featuring Jelko McMullen, and this is the fugue for the sign Cancer. You're listening to Starcast from Planet Waves. This is part 2 of the edition for Thursday, January 30th. I'm Eric Francis Coppolino, the editor of Planet Waves, and I am here with a look at the charts side by side for the federal funding freeze from Monday night, and then the Potomac River midair collision between a Black Hawk helicopter and an American Eagle commuter flight that claimed the lives of 14 members of the United States figure skating team, a national treasure if we have one, and 14 young lives of its members and trainers were lost. And this is a very, very tight actual community. It's not like the garbage men of the world. These athletes are pretty much training 7 days a week, not quite around the clock, but close to it, over periods of many long years. So my heart goes out to all of them, and then everyone else, including the pilots, were killed. But let's take a look at we know what's been going on in Washington, D.C. this week. It's been going on since basically the 5 minutes after the inauguration, when the people who Trump represents had him sign somewhere between 100 and 200 executive orders in the first day of his second term. This has thrown many people, places, and things into a state of complete chaos. And then now this past week, and I wrote about those all last week, all the things, changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico and claiming to release the Kennedy assassination documents and a million other things, some of them relevant, some of them not relevant, largely culminating in ICE raids in major cities where people are being rounded up and thrown out. And along with this, he said he's going to open up a 30,000-bed facility in Cuba, in Guantanamo Bay, and ship quote-unquote illegal aliens who he's claiming are the criminals, not just the ordinary people who wash your lettuce so you can eat a $25 salad in Midtown Manhattan. Ship them all down to Gitmo. Eventually, people are going to figure out that this is all a real problem. Before I get into these two charts, I want to read something from 2004 from a New York Times article by Ron Suskind, writer for the New York Times Magazine, who quoted a White House aide in 2004. We know who this aide was. It was Karl Rove. And in this article in the Times Magazine, Suskind wrote, the aide said that guys like me were, quote, in what we call the reality-based community, quote, which he defined as people who, quote, believe that solutions emerge from your judicious study of discernible reality. That's not the way the world really works anymore, the aide continued. We're an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality. And while you're studying that reality, judiciously as you will, we will act again, creating other new realities, which you can study too. And that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you, all of you, will be left to just study what we do. That was 21 years ago, and that spelled out what I think is a guiding philosophy of this thing called neoconservatism. Of course, neoliberalism does or attempts to do the same kind of thing by saying that we will decree that there are 18 genders and so forth, and that is another way of creating a reality that we, all of us, have to just kind of look at and live off the crumbs of. So a lot of people are doing this, and a lot of people are smoking the crack of their own presumed power. And now we know that these are effects that are digital in nature. This make one bubble of reality, then another reality, then another reality, and we live in the polyverse and not the universe and all that. This is the digital drug talking, as they say in recovery movements. It's the drug talking. Well, this is the digital drug talking. This quote by Rove is the voice of the robot. And all of the men who now surround Trump and who really put him into office, and who in the case of Musk getting in office and the West Wing and all of this stuff, these are all massive technocrats who are building these world-making machines. This is also the same week that a Chinese app was launched on these very platforms, on the very various app stores, Apple and Google and so forth, an AI app that temporarily at least caused a $1 trillion loss in the overinflated AI stock market, an AI bubble coming. And lest anyone think this is all about anything but a lot of money and totally controlling you, because what do they need all this AI for? I mean, there's a spiritual issue that people want to be relieved of the burden of thinking and of the responsibility of making decisions, so why not let a robot make the decision? Okay, so that happened this week, and also there was a federal funding freeze. Basically, Trump, under the guidance of all these robots, these androids. I don't mean your phone. I mean an actual android. Froze all of the grant money coming from the federal government. Everything was shut down. SNAP, Medicaid, Meals on Wheels, the whole bit. All of the social programs were shut down. So, this is the people be damned. Now, a federal judge put a stay on it right away, and then the administration, after denying what it had done, backed down and released the funding freeze. So these are strikingly similar charts. I've got them up for you side by side, and I'm not going to be able to do a comprehensive reading of these charts, such as challenging in any event, but I am going to be able to get us started looking at what these things are about. So if you listen to the first half of Starcast, you heard me talk about the conjunction of retrograde Mars and Chiron. We could look at that, on a personal level. That's kind of frustrated emotional ability to make choices. But if you look at it collectively, there's quite a lot of rage in that, and people may be feeling very angry. I wouldn't put that past anyone. Mars retrograde in Cancer, heck, I mean, this can be extremely frustrating. But it is coming into a 90-degree aspect with Chiron. A square with Chiron. And this is a something has got to give situation. And I think that once again, as powerful or over-powerful people usually do, they majorly overreached. They overplayed their hand. Now, these businessmen who have made all their money conquering everything in their path have no concept how to run this big nonprofit organization called the government, which exists on completely different terms. The purpose of the government is to serve the people. The purpose of a corporation is to serve the shareholders, whether you happen to serve the people along the way or screw the people of the future. It's a completely different mentality than running a government. Now, we all agree the government has become wildly self-serving. This thing called the administrative state is completely bloated and I think functioning illegally. However, the solution to this, as proposed on Monday night, was to cut the funding, turn off the funding to all of these social organizations. And let's look at the pattern. First of all, highlighting. Let's start with Pisces again. Highlighting the conjunction of Saturn and Nessus. I'm going to put a green bar next to that chart on the left, federal funding freeze, green bar to the right side of that chart. That is Saturn and Nessus. I'm going to write that in. Nessus, S-S-U-S, I can even spell it, and Saturn, S-A-T-U-R-N, not the car, the planet. All right. And this, again, is about consequences. Now, what these history's actors think is they can do all of this and not have consequences and not incur karma. This is a very, very important facet of the life that we are living right now, which is that many people are acting as if there are no consequences and if they will not incur karma. In other words, consequences. If their actions don't have consequences. So one of the reasons why the world is insane, is so completely insane, is that the fear of consequences is being kind of overpowered by the chaos of the world, and many people are realizing they can get away with anything, or they think they can get away with anything, and there's not going to be any consequences. And then furthermore, what was the part two of that? Anyway, this is what people think, and the chaos level is so high that some of them are right, but not all of them. Not all of them are right. And so all that happened the first week of the Trump administration, from noon on Monday the 20th to the evening of Monday the 27th, when the funding freeze was announced, has all been done as if it doesn't matter. I mean, I think that's pretty damn impressive, to take this kind of wild, outrageous action as if it doesn't make a difference. But these people are going to find out otherwise, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not merely threatening that. Eventually, the chickens come home to roost. And if they think that they can either govern or do business in the context of total chaos, I think that they're mistaken about that. So anyway, the cardinal square in this chart. Let's go to the cardinal square. I realize I'm jumping around a little bit today. These weeks are getting longer and the days are getting longer, and more complicated stuff to cover. All right. So in the federal funding freeze chart, I've drawn a red square. Those are all the planets that are talking to each other. There are plenty of them. And this is called a grand square, or a grand cross. Now, you're not going to hear this discussed on other astrology websites because most people aren't using the planets that I'm using, or using the methods that I'm using, or reading charts like this. If you've seen anybody else do the federal funding freeze chart, please put it in the comments or send it my way. All right, so the heart of the matter in this chart is Mars retrograding into Chiron, which is going to really provoke things, and we can see that it has, and the moon passing through the whole arrangement. So the closest aspect in the chart is Moon square Chiron. And it's in the sign Capricorn. And the thing is that these guys are a bunch of cranky, spoiled babies. They are all, basically, they either all have somewhere between $250 and $500 billion. You would think they could just do things, but they like play golf, or take up the oboe or something like that, or make a movie, or Elon Musk should go to Mars. But no, when you have concentrated and amassed that much power, you want to keep going. Poor men want to be rich. Rich men want to be king, and the king ain't satisfied till he rules everything. And so this square of Capricorn moon to Chiron in Aries is really like, wah, me. I want my power. I want my power. Or better yet, was it the man from another place? I want my Garmonbosia. Garmonbosia, Twin Peaks talk for the pain and suffering of others accumulated by entities on the other side, on the dark side, in the Black Lodge, collecting all of the pain and suffering of people and then eating it in the way it's eaten, what looks like creamed corn. It makes you never want to eat creamed corn again the rest of your life. So what they're doing is they are eating pain and suffering. I'm talking about Thiel and Bezos and Zuckerberg and Ellison, the guy I started the show with on Tuesday night, talking about how there's going to be a drone following everyone, And we're gonna know everything you do. Everything's gonna be on camera. Society's gonna be really nice. And he's having his wet dream of controlling everything with AI. This is why they need nuclear power plants to power the data farms. Got to ask yourself why. Why do they need Gates rented 3 Mile Island for 20 years? Why do they need a nuclear power plant to power the AI data farm? What are they going to do with it? Right? You mean you come into my apartment, there's a lot of musical instruments. You think, oh, maybe there's going to be a concert. Maybe someone's going to have a music lesson. You walk into somebody's house, there's a lot of guns. You think, oh, maybe somebody's going to get shot. You see them amassing server farms, the size of a large county, and having to rent a nuclear power plant. You got to ask yourself what they're going to do with all that data capacity. They're going to control us. We're going to stop this. But really, the chances are they're going to stop themselves. Okay, so Mars retrograde square Chiron. It's also a square Eris. It's a reminder that Eris-Chiron conjunction is a coming, and that's we're going to see the first peak of completely wild madness in May when that is exact. So the moon passes through that, and the hilarious thing in this chart, and I'll circle it in red, is the moon is conjunct Pallas. That is the asteroid of politics, and Pallas is square Eris, planet associated with chaos. There's chaos in politics. And look, chaos is part of the product, but eventually the chaos consumes itself. Okay, so these, now let's look, we've talked about Mars and Cancer, we've talked about Chiron and Aries, we've talked about the poor moon in Capricorn, square Chiron, wanting its mommy, but if it can't have its mommy, it's going to just eat you alive. It's going to eat all of its babies, making a conjunction to Pallas Athene, which is square the whole business, which is complete and utter chaos in politics. I think there's going to come a point where these guys are like, I really, really need to play golf. Like Ellison or somebody's going to say, I just need to float around on my yacht for 2 months. Y'all can all fuck off. All right. Now there is a concentration going on in Libra. This is in the federal funding freeze chart. I'm going to indicate that with a purple bar next to it, to the lower left side of the square. And that's a kind of a mix-up in Libra, but there's like a lot of mistrust in relationships, and there's the asteroid Industry is in there. That's all those billionaires and trillionaires, the loose affiliation of billionaires and trillionaires, plus a special point called Zeus. And the role of Zeus is to direct energy. I was positively stunned to see the prominence of Zeus directed energy in the chart for the California fires, where there was which mysteriously just went away. What did they go out? What is it? Like suddenly the fires mysteriously went out? Let's just take a quick look at the front page of the Los Angeles Times. You burn like 20,000 homes, and then that's it. Who or what started the Palisades fire? 2 leading theories emerged, and then they're looking at who. Deputies, no, everyone more, no. Okay, so the top story in the LA Times is at least who started the Palisades fire, the one that burned this whole seaside luxury neighborhood. So what do we have with this? Well, we're just getting cooking here. We're just getting going. There's still planets in Pisces. That's like real pleasant. Currently in Pisces and prominent in both of these charts, North Node, Neptune, Venus, and then the less pleasant Saturn-Nessus conjunction, which is like, okay, get ready for some consequences, but it's still Pisces. Saturn, all this stuff except for Nessus, moves into Aries. Saturn's going to go into Aries. Neptune's going into Aries, and Venus is going to be dancing retrograde between Aries and Pisces. This is all going to emphasize the fire signs. We are in the watery phase right now. We are in the mellow, smoke a joint, put on a movie, mellow, Pisces side of this equation right now. And we're going in the spring, we're going to get to the fire side of this. Without making any predictions except for one thing, that this is a moment to wake up. This is a moment to actually wake up and pay attention. And I will tell you, I'm going to write this or maybe do a podcast about it soon. There are really two different 2025s running in parallel to one another. One 2025 is the shit show that we are seeing. It's the funding freeze and the Potomac midair collision. And I have not drawn the connection between those charts. Let's do that right now. And then I'm going to finish with the two different versions of 2025. My question is, besides synchronicity, besides happening in the same place and the same time within 48 hours, is there a connection between the federal funding freeze and the Potomac midair collision? I don't know. Somebody whose husband's a big shot with the FAA got on my Facebook and said, no, absolutely not possible. I don't know. Is it possible? But Vivian Starfire, an astrologer who sends me messages, who also follows a lot of mundane astrology. There's some of us who really like mundane astrology, and she's one of them. Sent me an ad from, let's find this screenshot, sent me an ad from Lockheed Martin. Command an autonomous Black Hawk helicopter from 300 miles away. So this is a Black Hawk helicopter involved in this crash with I forget the type of jet, and one of those American Eagle, like kind of small jet planes. Not a private jet. It's like halfway between a private jet and a 737. Command an autonomous Black Hawk helicopter from 300 miles away. This is an ad she saw. It must have been an ad on her Facebook page, it looks like. She thought to save it. Then she asked our old friend Uncle AI, and can Black Hawk helicopters be remotely controlled or flown autonomously? Yes, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, who brought you the internet, has funded the DARPANet, now the internet, has funded the development of these capabilities. How it works: remote control. The ground operator can use a tablet to send commands to the aircraft. The aircraft can then execute the mission without pilot input. Autonomous flight. The aircraft can fly without a pilot, using onboard systems to navigate and avoid threats. The aircraft can also adjust for weather, geography, and other factors. What could possibly go wrong? Now you say, how do you know that the helicopter in this crash was unmanned? I don't know. But the only clue I have is that it flew straight into an airplane, and it wasn't foggy. I mean, if it was foggy, that would be one thing, but there's also all these airships have radar to tell you what's in the vicinity. It flew right into the airplane. Now, the New York Times says that the helicopter had been carrying 3 people. Carrying. You don't normally refer to the pilot and the co-pilot and the flight engineer as carrying. They're not passengers. I think it's strange language. So the question remains open whether this Black Hawk helicopter was under some form of either autonomous flight or being piloted remotely. Just saying. All right, let's talk about the two 2025s. One is this public, out in the open, kind of crazy shit show 2025 that we are seeing, where there's going to be basically chaos coming in from every direction, and the astrology is perfect to describe that chaos. It's really doing an admirable job of describing this chaos with all this stuff going on the Cardinal Cross, and yeah, we've been through this for the last 45 minutes. But there's the other side of that same exact astrology, which is the personal side, which is the aspect of this astrology that is about what happens to individuals. Do individuals grow? Do people become the next stage of who they are. And the astrology is equally descriptive of growth. It is descriptive of personal becoming, self-actualization, and what I'm calling the awakening. And so there are really going to be, it's kind of like we're going to be living in parallel universes where there's pure insanity coming through the news, like four things a day coming through. I mean, the kind of things that we've experienced this week that were coming through, like 2 or 3 events a day, were the kind of thing that would any one of them would be the sole thing occupying the news for 3 weeks in the 1970s or 1980s. And now it's like every 6 hours there's something that big. And you know you're in the digital realm because it's everything all at once. And you may feel personally overwhelmed. You may feel there's way, way too much for you to handle. And what I'm saying is, well, I would recommend keeping your focus inward. And when it comes to where you get so-called information from the outside, ask yourself whether you are feeding your anxiety as a distraction from yourself, or whether you're getting information you can actually consider, think about, and work with that is in some way personally relevant to you. And I'm not saying like the New York Times, like, what's the best way to make chicken soup after all? We finally are, in the New York Times test kitchen, we finally settle this important matter. No, I'm not talking about that kind of feature story. I'm talking about things like, for example, your intimate relationship to the technology that surrounds you. And this is not just about saying, I'm giving up my iPad, or I'm going back to a flip phone, or I'm going to get... I have a fantasy of having a white IBM Selectric typewriter. I just don't have enough desk space. I already work from 3 desks, but I would love to have one of those. No. I'm talking about understanding the ways that this technology environment has changed and transformed you, whether you are capable of having fun, whether you're capable of trusting yourself or anyone else, whether you're capable of having feelings, whether you believe anyone could possibly love you, whether you think there's any such thing as the truth, and or does the truth even matter? These kinds of questions, and they're all about the influence and the impact of technology, and in particular, what the digital environment has done to us. What has the digital environment done to us? And what is the way out? McLuhan said the only way out was to bring creativity. He said art provides the immunity. Most of us have some calling to do something beautiful. And it is possible to do many of the things that you do in ordinary ways, to do them beautifully. Now, I realize if you kind of work in an insurance office entering data, there may not seem to be a lot of beauty available there, and you might be able to do something different with your days and feel a lot better, and maybe even make more money. I don't know. All right, that is what I have to say. Pardon. I'll say to you on this fine midwinter afternoon here in upstate New York. Thank you for. If you've listened all through this, thank you for being willing to be open and to learn. I support this whole project through subscriptions and also sales of readings at this thing called the Astrology Boutique, astrology.boutique. That's the whole URL. And it's linkable from many places on Planet Waves and various podcasts. A new edition of Planet Waves FM came out on Tuesday, and there'll be a Planet Waves TV on Friday night. Lots of love, and bye for now.